CJ Carr is not just stepping into another Notre Dame season, he is stepping into a question. Can he lead the redemption tour? That is what makes his 2026 season so interesting. Notre Dame did not fall apart in 2025. They did not disappear. They did not look like a team without talent. They started slow, lost early, won 10 straight games, and still ended the season with frustration hanging over the program. That kind of season leaves a mark, and when a program like Notre Dame feels like something was taken from them, the next quarterback does not just inherit a playbook, he inherits pressure. CJ Carr enters 2026 as the face of that pressure, a redshirt sophomore quarterback with one strong starting season behind him, real National Football League draft buzz in front of him, and a fan base that expects Notre Dame to turn disappointment into a statement. But this story is not just about Notre Dame. It is about Carr, because the redemption tour only matters to FootballRealm if it changes the prospect. Can the young quarterback turn a pressure-filled season into a draft rise? Can he go from efficient first-year starter to true first-round quarterback? Can he become more than the next Notre Dame starter and start looking like one of the most important passers in the 2027 National Football League draft? That is the story. Before South Bend, before the starter spotlight, before the draft conversation, CJ Carr was already carrying a famous football name. He grew up in Saline, Michigan. His grandfather is Lloyd Carr, the legendary Michigan head coach who won a national championship and became one of the defining figures in Wolverine history. His father, Jason Carr, also played quarterback at Michigan. So when CJ Carr became one of the top quarterback recruits in the country, the easy assumption was obvious. Michigan had history, Michigan had family, Michigan had the emotional pull, but Carr chose Notre Dame. That decision matters because it tells you something about the player before he ever threw a college pass. He was not just following the most familiar path, he was choosing his own. At Saline High School, the production matched the name. Carr threw for more than 2,600 yards as a sophomore, more than 2,600 again as a junior, and more than 2,700 as a senior. He was a four-star recruit with major offers and a reputation for poise, accuracy, arm talent, and football intelligence. He was not built as a running quarterback. He was not sold as a pure athlete. He was sold as a passer, the kind of quarterback who wins from timing, processing, anticipation, and control. That profile followed him to Notre Dame. Carr arrived, waited, developed, and redshirted behind older quarterbacks. Then the door opened. Riley Leonard moved on. Steve Angeli transferred. The quarterback competition shifted, and Carr won the job. That alone was a big step. But winning the job at Notre Dame is only the first part. Keeping it, growing into it, and carrying the program through national expectations is where the story actually begins. His first start came on the road at Miami. That is not a soft landing. A young quarterback in a hostile environment, opening the season against a ranked opponent with Notre Dame expectations already sitting on his shoulders. The Irish lost, but Carr showed poise. He threw for more than 200 yards, delivered touchdown passes, added a rushing score, and gave Notre Dame a chance in a difficult opener. Then came another early loss. And suddenly, Notre Dame's season had a problem. They were talented enough to matter, but the margin had already disappeared. That is what makes the rest of the year important, because Carr and Notre Dame did not fold. They won 10 straight. As the season settled, Carr started to look less like a young quarterback surviving the moment and more like a player growing inside it. The breakout game came at Arkansas. Carr completed 22 of 30 passes for 354 yards and 4 touchdown passes in a 56-13 win. He threw for 294 yards in the first half alone. It was the kind of game that changes the tone around a young passer. Not because Arkansas was the whole story, but because Carr looked comfortable controlling it. He showed touch. He showed rhythm. He pushed the ball downfield. He spread the offense. He made the game look slower than it should look for a first-year starter. Then against NC State, he threw for 342 yards and 2 touchdown passes. The efficiency kept building. By the end of the season, Carr had started all 12 games. He completed 66.6% of his passes. He threw for 2,741 yards, 24 touchdown passes, and only 6 interceptions. He finished with 9.4 yards per attempt, threw a touchdown pass in every game, and produced one of the most efficient first seasons for a Notre Dame quarterback in modern program history. That is the case for him. The production was real. The efficiency was real. The decision-making was cleaner than you usually expect from a young starter. And the National Football League draft buzz started to make sense, but there is still a gap between being a good college starter and being a first-round quarterback. That gap is where 2026 lives. Real quick, if you're loving this deep dive, hit the like button and subscribe so you never miss another player journey. Carr's scouting profile is not difficult to understand. He has a clean release. He throws a catchable football. He has enough arm strength to attack outside windows and enough touch to layer throws downfield. When he is in rhythm, his timing and anticipation look advanced for his age. The ball comes out with purpose. He does not need chaos to make plays. He wants structure. He wants timing. He wants the offense to operate cleanly. That can be a strength. Quarterbacks who win from the pocket, process quickly, and protect the ball will always get National Football League attention. But it also creates the question, what happens when the structure breaks? Carr is not viewed as an elite creator with his legs. He can move enough to buy time and reset, but he is not the kind of quarterback whose athleticism becomes the whole offense. He has to win by being sharp, early, accurate, and calm. That means 2026 is not just about bigger numbers. It is about harder answers. Can he handle more of the offense? Can he start faster? Can he lead Notre Dame through the kind of games that decide playoff races? Can he prove that his efficiency was not just the product of a strong run game and a good supporting cast? That last question matters. Notre Dame's offense had balance. The run game helped, the roster helped, the defense helped. That is not a knock on Carr, but it is part of the evaluation. The National Football League does not only ask if the numbers are good, it asks why the numbers are good. It asks what the quarterback controlled. It asks what happens when the answer is not already built into the play. And that is why Notre Dame's redemption tour could become Carr's perfect proving ground. A normal season would give him development. This season gives him stakes. Notre Dame is trying to turn frustration into fuel. The program remembers the early losses. It remembers the late winning streak. It remembers being left outside the playoff conversation, despite finishing with momentum. That pressure will surround every game, and Carr will be the player most connected to whether the story changes. If Notre Dame starts fast, he gets credit. If Notre Dame wins big games, he gets evaluated differently. If Notre Dame returns to the playoff conversation, Carr becomes more than a young quarterback with good numbers. He becomes the face of a national response. That is how draft stories accelerate, not just from statistics, from moments, from pressure, from answering the exact question everyone was asking before the season started. Can CJ Carr lead Notre Dame's redemption tour? If he does, the 2027 National Football League draft conversation becomes much louder, because the class already has bigger names. Arch Manning has the spotlight. Dante Moore has the tools and Oregon stage. Lenoris Sellers has the physical profile. Other quarterbacks will rise as the season moves. Carr's lane is different. He is the steady riser, the pocket passer with efficiency, the quarterback with the famous Michigan football bloodline who chose Notre Dame, the young starter who protected the ball, the prospect who may not need to be the flashiest athlete if he proves he is the cleanest operator. But clean has to become commanding. That is the next step. In 2025, Carr showed he could run the offense. In 2026, he has to show he can own it. He has to prove the early season lessons became growth. He has to prove the big performances were signs of what is coming, not just flashes in a balanced system. He has to prove that when Notre Dame needs the quarterback to be the reason, he can be the reason. That is the difference between being Notre Dame's starter and being a first-round National Football League draft prospect. One is a job, the other is a projection, and projections get tested under pressure. For CJ Carr, the pieces are already there. The recruiting pedigree, the famous football name, the decision to choose his own path, the redshirt development, the efficient first season, the Arkansas breakout, the low interception total, the Notre Dame spotlight, the redemption tour. Now comes the season that tells us what all of it means. If Carr leads Notre Dame back into the national picture, if the efficiency holds, if the passing responsibility grows, and if the big games bring out his best football, the draft conversation could shift fast. Because quarterback stories do not need years to change. Sometimes they need one season, one stage, one answer. And CJ Carr is walking into 2026 with all three. Can he lead Notre Dame's redemption tour? And if he can, how high does his National Football League draft stock climb? That's the story in Football Realm. If you love deep player journeys, hit subscribe and join the realm. Drop your thoughts below. Who do you want profiled next?